Hello, this is Jennifer Marshall again, and it's day 2 of our gluten-free sourdough starter. Yesterday, I mixed for the first time gluten-free buckwheat and rice flour together to make a day 1 sourdough starter. So what I did is I obviously brought it home because we were outside when I did the video, and I brought it home. And I covered it loosely. As I said, it's very important to cover the jar loosely so that it breathes. We don't lock out the air and the oxygen. And left it in my pantry. My pantry, the temperature is actually not cold, so it is a nice temperature of, I think, about 22, 23 degrees. And today, this morning, I actually had a look at it. And what happened was that I noticed that there was a liquid separation on top, and I kind of left it there. I didn't even touch it. You know, through fermentation, so many things happen. So it's also about, as I keep on saying, being patient. And so there was clear that there was the mixture on the bottom, and there was a liquid, sort of brownish liquid on top. This is nothing to worry about. It is basically called hooch. I'm sure you've seen it many, many times in various videos or YouTube links and so on. And all we should do eventually is to mix it in. However, since it is, I'm showcasing or showing how to make a sourdough, gluten-free sourdough starter, I decided not to touch it and left it for the rest of the day. So basically I left it for now a full 24 hours. Starters also, by the way, like routine. So if you can feed it at approximately the same time that you normally feed your starter, it would be good. However, there is nothing to worry about if you can't. It's okay if your timing changes. We should be flexible, and the starter will adapt. There is nothing that will kill a starter unless it's mold. The only thing that will kill a starter is mold, or, for example, if you bake it by mistake. So I left it. I came back this evening and I had a look at it, and basically through fermentation the liquid somehow disappeared, and it actually changed its texture. So over the last 24 hours, even though it's the first day of my starter, there has been a change in texture. And what I also did, I'm sure you noticed, that I've changed my jar. I actually had a smaller jar, and I decided that since now I'm feeding it and I'm adding more flour to it and more water, I need a slightly bigger jar. It's okay to change jars. The most important thing is that your jar is sterilized and it's super clean, that there is no remnants of anything. It's very important. And the one thing I'm noticing with my sourdough starter is this. So I have a mixture of buckwheat and white rice flour. On the surface of my starter, there are plenty of tiny bubbles on the surface. So it's packed with tiny bubbles, and this is such a good sign, because the bubbles are showing activity already, that there is some kind of life being formed. It's going to take some time to, of course, make the starter active, but the bubbles on the surface are a really good sign to me that it's showing that there is some activity going on. What I'll do today is I'll feed it in exactly the same manner. I've decided to feed it a bit less, because if I'm feeding every day 100 grams of each flour, it will be a lot. So that's 200 grams of flours every day, and that will make the starter a bit too big. So the most important is to feed your starter in the beginning. By the way, there will be also a change of smell as the days go by, so you will notice a change in smell. However, we are in day 2. For me, it's day 2, and there is absolutely no change in smell, but there is a change in texture. Lots of tiny bubbles on the top. It's perhaps more liquidy than it was yesterday. So there will be a texture change as well, for sure. But the smell will perhaps not be anything to notice for now. However, there will be a massive change by the 3rd or the 4th day, so there's nothing to worry about that. Okay, so what I'll do is this. As I said, it's very important to have a scales, to have a measurement scales. Even your liquid, your water, needs to be measured. I would much rather measure it in grams or pounds or ounces, whichever fits you best, rather than measuring it in milliliters. So it's very important to have exact measurement. So for example, if you're doing 100 grams of flour, you make sure you have 100 grams of water. So having the correct measurement is actually quite important for sourdough. Okay, so what I'm doing today is this. I'm going to add the same flours. 50 grams of white rice flour goes into my starter, and 50 grams of buckwheat. I started yesterday my sourdough starter with buckwheat and white rice flour, so I'm doing exactly the same, feeding exactly the same. 50 grams and 50 grams today, and 50 grams of brown rice flour, buckwheat, sorry. And I'm adding 100 grams of water. So that is exact ratio. It's 1 to 1 basically. So this is my 100 grams of water. I hope it doesn't spill. I might have to again change my jar tomorrow, but that's okay. You know, it's, as I said, as long as my jar is clean, that's the most important. And I give it a really, really good mix. And again, the most important is to be super patient, because starters take a long time, well, at least 7 days to really get active, and, you know, when you start seeing some really nice activity. So be patient. Mix it again. Feeding it is very, very important, so that, first of all, you avoid mold, and secondly, you're feeding the microbes. You're giving them food, basically. So you're encouraging activity. By feeding, you're really encouraging activity into your starter. Okay, so really well fed. And the texture of your starter, again, should be like a thick mud or like a thick yogurt. So these are kind of the best ways that I can recommend or explain how one should look at your starter. If your starter is too liquidy, is too wet, I would suggest to check again your measurements. There would be something that is perhaps not right with the measurement. So having a mud-like starter is actually quite important. One reason for this, from all the reading that I've done, is so that we have this kind of thick texture, so that gases do not escape. Okay, so because if it is too liquidy, then gases escape. So I'll try and show it also to the camera about the texture. I hope you can see it. I don't want to spill it. So this is the texture. But I think it is quite a nice way to look at it when you think, what does mud look like, or what does a thick yogurt look like? And it's pretty much the same. It shouldn't be too thick or too liquidy. It should be just, you know, a good feel for it. If you have the right measurement, you will have a really, really good texture. What I will do now with it is, again, cover it with a cloth, because I want to avoid any tiny flies that will come to it, and flies like it. You know, it's amazing, these like fruit flies, these tiny flies. So, and again, by covering it, it gives it kind of warmth, and you know, it's like taking care of a pet, you know. And I'll leave it again for 24 hours. So tomorrow I'll come back on video and explain a little bit what we do, and it might be that the smell of my sourdough starter will change. I don't know. Let's see. It all depends on the temperature. So at this point, you also have to be a little bit your own judge as to the temperature you leave it. One thing that is for sure is that microbes love warmth. They love warmth. So if you find a nice warm place, it is better for the microbes and for the starter. Okay, so I'll just cover it and place it in my pantry again, because I like the temperature in there. And I'll come back again tomorrow to show you what happens to my starter, my gluten-free sourdough starter. Take care.